liberating you from any legal threat from listening to words from me is for you to do the following. I want all of you to point at me, and because the Church of Scientology says that I'm a bigot, they say I'm a liar and I'm psychotic. The Church of Scientology blog has said that I'm genuinely evil. So I want all of you now to point at me and shout bigot, bigot, bigot. Do that now.
Bigot, bigot, bigot.
I'm sorry, there's absolutely no point in this evening unless you leave this room as forced as I did one day when I met the Church of Scientology. I want you to really yell, and I want you to do it in a concerted way. 1, 2, 3. Bigot, bigot, bigot! Do it again.
Bigot, bigot, bigot!
Psycho!
Psycho, bigot!
About the Church of Scientology. The first was in 2007, called Scientology and Me When I Famously Lost It. So I'm going to go into that when we get there, Scientology. And both films are there on YouTube. You can see them equally. If you're interested in Scientology and don't know much about it, you can, of course, go there and go and talk. It's a free country, the United States, same as Britain. All of these things are freely available. My only word of advice, and by the way, I'm attuned to talking to people who are non-Scientologists. So you just think everything I've just said is crazy in the last 10 seconds. But before I would enter a church of Scientology, to be honest, the church has great acolytes, its apostles, people like Tom Cruise and John Travolta, the other Hollywood stars, not so A-list these days, but nonetheless they exist. They say the Church of Scientology is a great thing, it helps you communicate, and so forth and so on. People who've left the church, some of whom are in this room, will know clearly that there is something quite wrong about that. That this thing is terrifying and dark and peculiar and strange and weird. I can get at you. And to be honest, that is my own personal experience of the church. Now, it starts with a very simple thing. In America, the Church of Scientology is officially classed as a religion. To this day, in it is an organisation which says it does wonderful things and it's good. And its apostles, Cruise and Travolta and the rest, they, for example, they pop up certainly on British chat shows, the BBC, ITV, Channel 4, in the States. Very, very rarely does anybody challenge them about this organisation they're in. Very rarely does somebody say, well, tell me, what about this thing, Scientology? What's it about? And there's a very simple problem. Scientology says it's a religion, and as I said in Britain, it's still not classed as a religion by the people who made the decision on this, the Charity Commission. The critical thing is this, I think. If you walk into a church, they'll tell you about Jesus. You walk into a mosque, they'll tell you follow the prophet. You walk into a synagogue, marry a nice Jewish girl, only bacon sandwiches, whatever, you get the drift. You walk into a Church of Scientology here in Clearwater, and they will not say that 75 million years ago, a space alien, Satan called Lord Zenon, brought space aliens to Earth and massacred them with hydrogen bombs inside volcanoes. They won't tell you that. And that, I think, means, in my view, it should not be classed as a religion. Because a religion should be open and honest about what it believes in. It's simple. If it's a good thing, then spread the gospel. Follow the prophet. All of those things we understand. And you know what you're getting into. Now, all of the big religions, all of them have their problems. And I would not wish to deny that at all. The Catholic Church, the paedophile scandal. On the edge of Islam, you have jihadism. It's frightening. On the edge of Orthodox Judaism, there have been some terrible child abuse problems. There is a Buddhist monk in Burma who is effectively a fascist, calling for the murder of Muslims, and Muslims are dying on the coast of Burma. All of those things happen. All of those things are real. But I think it's also true to say that all of the big religions have got a core, a mass of people who are perfectly good and decent, and they have a right to believe in whatever they want to believe in. And by the way, this is strange, but last year I went to North Korea, where there is no freedom of religion or freedom of speech of any kind whatsoever. And that means there is no church, no mosque, no synagogue, and right to say what it's about. How much does it cost? Is that fair? Is that reasonable? Are you doing harm here? Those are all fair questions in an open society. And if you have one right which says we have a right, we must be respected because we're a religion, and those other rights are held in submission, that's not fair, that's not balanced. And there's something, so I think there is something fundamentally questionable about the Church of Scientology and how it works and how it rolls. Now, normally, I'd like to show you some clips. The problem is that Lord Zenu has come down from outer space and taken away the projector.
Although I'm a nutter, I'm the least fucked up OT that Alex has seen. Yeah, that's what I heard. That's Alex. I figure it's going to be a little bit hard to confine me in this little space, but due to the webcam, I think I have to. Usually I jump around while I do my speeches or talks. So if I start to move too much, you can just tell me, because I will move out of the webcam. Hello, webcam. And usually I make a point out of not preparing anything in life. I try to get rid of all my preconceived ideas, my expectations, and all planning in life. Which means I have no clue what is going to come out of my mouth from now until I'm finished talking. So in order to make sure I deliver to you what you want, I would like to make this a huge Q&A session. In Scientology, Q&A is something bad, something you shouldn't do. So let's do sport here, just, practice Q&A. So I would like to take questions from the audience, which can then put me on some kind of track, and let's just flow. Let's go with the flow. But one rule: keep the question short. 15 words max. Because I have to repeat the question so that the rest of you guys can hear it. If it becomes too long, I can't repeat it. Is that fair? Okay, so questions? Yep.
What would you say to the person who was Scientologist like that?
Right. Just to put a little context to it, since you didn't say anything about who I am and what I did, I'll just preface that. Okay, so I was in Scientology for 25 years. I came in 1984, and I split in 2009. I completed OTA in 2006. Okay? And with all that said, and I've been blogging since 2009 profusely, and a lot of it, and discussing a lot on the internet regarding various stuff, including what I should say to a Scientologist right now. But since I'm a work in progress, my viewpoints always shift, and what I said yesterday might not be what I think today. So what would I say? I generally would recommend people to leave Scientology, at least Church of Scientology, because of all the reasons that John Sweeney covered. It is sort of a North Korea, although I would say it's rather much more like Vietnam. About a month or 1.5 ago, I met with the opposition leader of Vietnam, Mr. Do Diem. And Vietnam is much more parallel than North Korea because Scientology looks very posh on the outside, like Vietnam. It's an excellent country to go on a vacation, has excellent food, seems very open, seems very genuine, except it's one of the 5 one-party communist states in the world. North Korea has totally shut down all communication, including Facebook, whatever. Whereas Vietnam tried to do the same, but they realized they couldn't, so they opened up, and instead they instituted something called sort of like a Facebook police, so that anybody that voices an opposition on Facebook gets jailed and tortured. Much better idea if you're going to prosecute people than just shut off the information. It's a little bit like Scientology does. So, just as I would recommend the people of Vietnam to revolt against the one-party regime, I would say either revolt or get the hell out of there. That's my message. Any other questions? Come. I talk freely about anything. If you want to hear about
dates that the highest provided to the council versus the ones who are heading to that
I can answer that. You see, if you go on the bridge to OTAs, that is the way to spend the most money. Okay? You don't spend as much money doing training. It's cheaper to do training than to do auditing. Okay? So if you put a person as an opinion leader at OTA into the position of an executive director of an org, people will look up to that and try to become the same, meaning they will try to pay more money. If you have a trained person, they will want to be like him, which is not so much money. You see? It's an interesting way of trying to draw the masses to pull the money out of them. But let me tell you the story then. Anybody heard how I realized that I should use the 30% audit? No? Some of you have seen the video, maybe not. Okay, let's do this one. The reason I realized that I had to get the hell out of there was in 2006 I met David Miscavige. Just 2 weeks after I completed OTAs, I went back to Freelands on the maiden voyage to be part of, for the first time as an OTA, to be part of the maiden voyage. This is 4 consecutive days of speeches by David Miscavige where he talks about the strategy, what an OT should do, and everybody is made into an OT ambassador and charged with the responsibility of expanding Scientology in his or her country. I was the only one from Norway, and at the end of the 4 days, there was this photo shoot. All the people should do a photo shoot with David Miscavige country by country. I was standing outside this restaurant where the photo shoot was taking place, together with 2 Swedes. So we were the only people from Scandinavia, and they had taken on Stockholm Org as the executive director and the person in charge of technical delivery, the OES. And they were talking to me and saying, Guy, we think you should take on the role as the executive director of Oslo Org. I said, no, it's not going to happen. Well, you should, because now we took the responsibility of Sweden, and you need to take the responsibility of Norway. I said, no. And we should do the photo shoot together, they said. And then just to fill you in on the history of Norway and Sweden, they were a union up until 1905. So I told them, well, you heard about 1905. We're not one country anymore, we're 2 separate countries. Norway is a sovereign country, I'm going on myself. Thank you very much. And they said, well, we'll just put it there, and you're going to be the next ED of Oslo Org. And they walked in. I said, no, don't do that. And after a while, I was invited, the whole entourage, and the whole people in uniforms and bodyguards and everything. I came into the room, and when I came in, I heard a little voice, very strong voice, saying, where is the guy from Oslo? And this little chap came in, about this high, with high heel shoes, and came to me and asked me the question. I said, here, sir. And then he put his hand forth and said, so you're the next ED of Oslo Org. Congratulations! I said, no, sir, I'm not. And the people around were like, it isn't known to take advantage. What the hell is happening? And people are grappled and looking down and don't know what to do. But he pushed on. He said, what could be a better game? And then just slipped out. I said, well, I can think of a few. And from that point, it just went south. It just turned sour, the whole thing. And then he said, but you should do this. We knew nothing about Norway. We don't know anything what's happening there. You as an OTA should take the responsibility. You're an OTA ambassador, you should take... I said, no, that's not going to happen. And when he realized I wasn't moving on this issue, in the middle of a sentence, he just turned around and walked out of the room. And people were fluttering around, picking up an apple, putting it down, looking at the floor, and like, what the hell happened here? And they were really scared. I could see the fear in their eyes. And after about 5 minutes, and I'm standing there contemplating the worst recruitment cycle I've ever heard. I used to run a recruitment company for 10 years. I've done like 2,000 plus recruitments, and this is the worst one. Because here you have a guy in charge of a whole organization with sacked in a second and instate a person who he does not know who is, me, in his place, bypassing 15 people in the command channel. This is crazy shit. So I was thinking, where is the hidden camera? This must be a TV show of sorts. And then he came back in and said, okay, let's do the photo shoots. But you're the next CEO of the world. I'm keeping an eye on you. Know that. And then one of his outwards said, yes, sir, I'm tracking you, sir, I'm tracking you. Really strange stuff. And from that point, I realized that the shit I'd seen through 25 or 21 years at the time, 22 years, the shit I'd seen locally, which I thought was people that were really not trained, they were rude, but there was some sort of a Dalai Lama at the top that was struggling with the people that couldn't behave at the bottom. This was my explanation, this was my justification, if you want. Now, at this moment in time, I realized that this isn't right. The problem, the shit, is trickling down from the top. So everything just collapsed. Just the justification, like the house of cards from low. And I thought, I gotta get out of here. That's it. But then it took another year of me being a lot in work, very active as a Scientologist, really, and then I started researching. And the next 2 years, from 2007 to 2009, I spent about 1,000 hours reading everything I could on it, researching it, until I wrote a declaration of 6 pages why I left in 2009. So that was probably an answer to a question, was it? Yeah, it was. Okay. Well, thank you. I don't even remember the question. This thing about memory clearing off of those yet? I don't know. Any other questions? Please give me a question. Hand up, please. Yes. The SP at the back. Okay, that was a lot more than 15 words, but I'll try to rephrase it in 15 words or something. Okay. What is the current state of the church, and what will the future bring? Yeah? Okay. I think the following. This is a blog post I posted today, which I will sort of rephrase right now. As long as L.R.H. Hubbard was alive, there was always this chance that he would develop the new breakthrough technique that would finally clear the planet. There's always this hope. In 1978, we got the knots, we got superpower, we got key to light stuff, and in 1984, we got false purpose remnant, Then he died. And a little power vacuum, and then the scavengers came to the helm, and all of a sudden we have this go-to guy, a tough guy, that could finally bring clearing the planet into fruition. Then when we got 48 released, now we do it. Now there is nothing that can stop us. Right after that, we got the re-release of the books in 1989. Then we get the release of Life Orientation Course and Hidden Life in 1990. Now, finally, we will be able to claim the planet. But we have one big enemy. We hit the enemy, and that was 1993. We got arrested. Now there is nothing that can stop us from clearing the planet. But not all is well in the heart of Scientology, because people are fucking up. So, 1996 comes, golden age of tech, the quantum meter. Now, finally, we can clear the planets. Except the books. There was errors in the books. So, the golden age of technology is the golden age of knowledge. Now, finally, we can clear the planets. Not quite. We have some more trouble to fix. So, golden age of tech 2, superpower building. Now, finally, we can clear the planets. Expansion is not happening, even though the ideal org strategy along the way should cater for that. It doesn't. There is no straight up vertical, there's straight down vertical. Look at the downtown Clearwater, it's empty. It's very like a ghost town. And so is every other org I have been to. It's dead, it's dying. So, I would say, give it 4 or 5 years for the people inside the church to realize that not even this works. So, David Miscavige will play his final card. He will release OT 910. He will release something called OT 910. Never mind that nobody knows what OT 910 is, or should be, because Rainmaker has been reprimanded so many times for not knowing what it is. There is an RPF permanently. But something will be released. And 4 or 5 years after that, people will realize that the last card played, even that doesn't work. Then you will get an implosion, you will get something nasty happening, and I bet, since you have a lot of people around David Miscavige in his close circle that invested so much in the guy, that when the failure becomes obvious to them, I think we might even have suicides on our hands. Actually. The only thing that could, I think, would stop this evolution that I'm talking about now is if David Miscavige gets indicted for something. That could shortcut the next 8 to 10 years I'm talking about. Then we can see the implosion before that. It might happen. I would say him getting indicted for something and 50%, 85%, what I envision is how I see it now. Tomorrow, maybe I see it differently. Other questions? Yes. What do I think of the viability of the independent Scientologists and the people that think that LH was a godsend? Well, I think the independent Scientologist movement is so scattered and so fragmented that I think there is people there that think LH was, the next coming, and I think that there's people out there that think it was a mucker, but that's brilliant moments. There is a whole spectrum of people out there. I think that as long as there is knowledge, there will be people that benefit from the knowledge, and people will do what they like. I'm very much an advocate for abolishing all patents and all copyrights in all parts of society. I want to kill all that. I want to keep trademarks for the reason that I want people to not be defrauded. The copyrights and patents, kill it. Then knowledge is free, and people can do what they want. And with that, there will always be cells of independent this, that, and the other. And people will be mixing and combining and do whatever they like. And I'm totally fine with that. Yes?
How did you mentally deal with the OT level? You read about Zenu. How did you justify continuing on and going up the bridge?
How did I, well, you all heard it, right? It's a lot. Yeah, excellent. When I read, I was in Sydney doing the OT levels in 1996, and I read the science fiction story as part of the OT 3 level, the Zenu story. And quite frankly, I wasn't, that didn't hit me or not hit me. I was much more interested in, okay, so what do I audit? What the hell do I audit? This is the story, get that out of the way. What is the auditing all about? So, and one thing that made me perhaps progress through the whole bridge, up until including OTA, was that I never had an expectation. I wasn't expecting to get superpowers. I wasn't expecting to be this or that or the other. I was just thinking, oh, this is an adventure. Let's try this. Oh, auditing, fun. Let's figure out how this works. And one thing worked, and the next thing worked. I had positive experiences and gains on everything I've done in Scientology. There's nothing I can look back at and say, this was crap or bad or whatever. It worked with me. But I guess anything could work with me. If somebody told me another route, I would go, yeah, let's see how this works. Because I'm sort of a walking placebo monster. Throw something at me and I believe it. Yes, it works. It's just, I fly with anything almost. There's no food I don't like, and there's nothing I can, poke into, and it works. But this worked for me. So I was at OT3. I read the story and thought, okay, get me a session and see what happens. And all this thing about body fake news and OT levels and CU and all of that. I've written a lot about what I think that is. And it's not politics, it's not separate meetings, it's something else. And if you go to my blog, there are some posts on there where I say what I think is what works and why it works. It's not what the author says, according to me.
You know, despite 8 years of watching this going on, I actually thought it was our fault that the thing wasn't going, right? And this was reinforced by the idea from Hubbard that, you know, only on policy orgs boomed. So if we weren't booming, then it was us because we weren't on policy, right? So you know, I really wanted to do something about that. So I figured I needed to take more responsibility. I needed to do more. You know, it was my shoulder. So I convinced myself that I could just give it my all. I could really make a difference. And I thought, well, those guys in the Sea Org, they give it their all. They're doing it 24/7, and they don't have to pay for their room, or their board, or their food, or their medical, or anything. They get all that taken care of. What a great life. So I went and I decided it was time for me to move up, and I joined the Sea Org, and that was when I was 25 years old. Okay. I arrived at the Sea Org in Los Angeles in the summer of 1995, and I went immediately into church management. And I was overseeing all of the technical delivery, all of the auditing and the courses for all of the Western United States. So I went right onto that post. And I did that for 8 years. And I didn't have any training for that kind of executive position, but I kind of found out at management level neither did anybody else. It was everybody kind of making it go right. And so, you know, we kind of slogged that out, and I did that for 8 years on that particular job until I burned out in about 2003. And I lasted longer on that post than most other people in management lasted on theirs. But enough had been enough. There were just, I could go on all myself, all the abuse, craziness, and nonsense that happened over those 8 years, but we don't really have time for that, so I won't. But little did I know that getting myself out of management was not the end of the story for me. I'm still in the Sea Org, and after bouncing around on different jobs for about a year, I ended up on the RPF, the Rehabilitation Project course. And it was really, my road there was really just a reflection of my burnout from management. It wasn't anything special that I did that landed me there. And I was at rock bottom as a person, just wasted. And I felt like I really didn't have anything else to live for. So for me, at that time, the RPF was actually a kind of hope. Because you're all told in the Sea Org that it's all about rehabilitation. And I thought, well, I could do some rehabilitating right now, so sign me up, right? So I go to the RPF. Well, the only comparison that can be made to the RPF is prison. That's just the word to use. You may have heard horror stories about that program, and I have to tell you that most of them are true. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done in my entire life. It took me a little over 3 years to get through it, but I did. I graduated the program. And I was never the same again. And I didn't quite get the end result of that they kind of want you to get, which is you're fully rehabilitated as a Sea Org member. I kind of got myself a little in order, but I also saw much more clearly how off the rails everything was around me. And still I managed to kind of get my way through, so that was a good thing. But I did know for sure that I was never, ever going to do something like that again. There are some people, by the way, this doesn't get mentioned much, but there are people in the Sea Org who've done the RPF 2 or even 3 times. Now, so a few months after graduating, I was working on recruiting new Sea Org members. That's what I basically got on to. And I was very successful at that, and that led me into working on getting staff for the Ideal Awards. This thing was going, the Ideal Awards at this point was going, and I was working on recruiting, and I was working on getting people back into the fold, because what we were finding is they'd go out to recruit staff for these Ideal Awards, and there weren't enough public to recruit to man the thing up. You know, these awards are supposed to have like 110 staff, and some of these fields don't have that many people in them. So I got put on to recovering people, lung psychologists, right? And, and I went for that. I didn't really believe in the organization. organizations so much anymore, but I still believed in the tech, and I still believed in Ron at that point. So, and I really wanted to help people, and I thought that that would be a way to do it. And it was while I was out and about, all over the western United States, that I got to see something that most Scientologists don't see up close. And that is, I saw a lot of ideal orgs before, during, and after their opening. And I saw how empty they were. And I saw how difficult it was to get people back into the fold. Now, the blown Scientologists that I was contacting, and I'm talking about like going to their house and knocking on their door and, hi, you know, tell me your tale of woe. Well, they had some tales, and it was quite something. There were repeated failures of the orgs to deliver what they promised. There was misrun and messed up auditing. There was abuses of confidential information. And of course, some of these people told me what they saw and read on the internet, which was a lie-opening for me. And after seeing more and more of these cases of people being blown off because of what we were doing, what the church was doing in the name of clearing the planet, it became abundantly clear to me that this was not what we were being told it was. Well, all this ideal work stuff, right? And in Scientology, they train you not to tell lies, but to tell acceptable truths. You ever heard that before, acceptable truths? Tell someone only about the good parts, leave out the bad, right? Pump up, you know, the parts you want people to hear about, and leave out the and say that. Leave out the bad news, right? Like, for example, the Sea Org member, you know, you're recruiting somebody to come join the Sea Org. Hey, Sea Org members are entitled to 3 weeks of vacation every year. You can tell somebody that when you're recruiting them, they go, hey, wow, that sounds great. What you don't say is in 17 years of being in the Sea Org, I never once saw one person take 3 weeks of vacation ever. Nor 2 weeks, or I think once I saw a person take 1 week. So you don't talk about that. Or the fact that, you know, everybody's entitled per policy to 12.5 hours a study. Great. So, survey any organization on the planet and find out how many staff even go to study, much less take 12.5 hours, right? These acceptable proofs. So, at every event I was going to, I was seeing Chairman of the Board, David Miscavige, touting statistics that I knew were false. He was, you know, showing pictures of full courtrooms that I knew were empty because I had been in those orgs. He was talking about these new orgs being hives of activity, and I knew they were ghost towns. I've just been to too many of them. And it dawned on me that there were more lies than there was truth. And that my own life had become a string of acceptable truth. That was such a good realization. So I decided to get out. And at the time I was on a Sea Org mission in the Minnesota border. And I helped open the place up, and I was supposed to get the staff to fill it up with, you know, public. And that was going nowhere. I mean, in all of Minnesota, there are about 150 Scientologists total. Minnesota, Wisconsin, Ohio, Dakotas. That's it. That's all there are. I know all of them by name. So despite all that, even despite all that, I still believed in L. Ron Hubbard and the tech, even if I thought the organization was on. So I went back to Los Angeles and I officially routed out the Sea Org in December 2012. I didn't vote. I wanted to do this thing. So it was shortly after that that the true face of Scientology sort of reared its ugly head to me. About a month after I had left the Sea Org once and for all, with my feet pretty much on the ground, I went back to Minnesota to live. And when the Sea Org found out that that was the place where I was going, the last place I had been a Sea Org member, the last place I'd been a missionary, all hell broke loose. They went completely batshit. I'm crazy about it because of the out PR that I was causing. Because I was a Sea Org member and now I'm a public person in an area where everybody liked me. You see? It's bizarre, and it really doesn't make any sense, but the Sea Org way of thinking, it made perfect sense. I was told that I was really pissing people off, right? And that, you know, the M&A at the ethics officer at the Continental War was calling that she was being yelled at because I was in Minnesota. And I was like, oh, okay. And, it was totally off the rails, and they just hated the idea that anyone would basically tarnish their pretty much delusionally polished image, right? So I spent months trying to sort this out, to no avail. I was basically being treated like a suppressed person. My reputation was being muddied by ethics orders being sent from management into the org, talking about what a horrible person I had been in the Sea Org, even though every post I ever held in the Sea Org I had produced very well and people liked me. But now I was, a horrible person. So, despite all that, I've also, and this was really the thing, I had made a few Facebook friends with Scientologists. And because of that, I had ethics reports written up on me. Right? He made Facebook friends. Like literally, that's literally what the report said, right? And I went out a few times socially with a couple of Scientologist staff members. Off the rails. So they called me up, and they told me that I was to report to Los Angeles for immediate evidence. What? You want me to do what? So I was expected, literally, that day to go buy a plane ticket and go fly to Los Angeles for my committee. So I said, well, no. And I said, why? I didn't even see these reports yet. So I finally got the reports, and I just was like, you gotta be kidding me. This was just too ridiculous for words. You're seriously commenting me because I was Facebook friends with a couple of the staff. So I never seen anything like this. And basically what it did is it sort of drove me to the internet. Because I couldn't figure out why this was happening to me. It just didn't make any sense. Even with everything I knew, it just didn't make sense. Well, I went down the rabbit hole, and I didn't come up for 2 months. And I learned things I had no idea about. I got answers to questions I'd forgotten I even had. I mean, mysterious things that had happened when I was in the Sea Org, issues that had come out, and circumstances that had occurred that didn't make any sense at the time. I was now getting the story on what actually happened in those circumstances by the people who were there, who are now out of the Sea Org and were telling the story. It was mind-blowing, right? I just had no idea. I thought, when I left the Sea Org, that I had a pretty good idea of what was wrong. I disagreed with the idea of orgs. I saw there was too much rezzing. I didn't like any of these things. But after diving down the rabbit hole, I found out I didn't have a clue. Just no idea. So amazingly, and the funny thing about this for me is I never would have known any of this if the church hadn't treated me the way they did. Because I was actually still with the program when I left. And all I was doing was exactly what I said I was going to do. Which I was going to go to the org, I was going to help the org out, I was going to pay my freeloaders debt, do my conditions, and I was going to go up the bridge. And apparently most Sea Org members who leave don't do this. They disappear, they fade away. Well, I was an exception to that, right? People told me that. They were like, wow, people don't do this, right? And I just went to the wrong place. I went to Minnesota. They basically did everything they could to make me into an enemy. And the fact that I'm standing here today talking to you is really only because they pushed me out and told us. I even reached out to them to do the ADP steps, right? To try to make good on this because I didn't want to be disconnected. And basically the evil and insidious nature of Scientology's justice system just couldn't be stopped. Because of their enforced disconnection policy, they took away basically the one person in my life that I just didn't really want to be disconnected from. And that was it. That was the straw that broke the camel's back for me. And I basically will never forgive them for that. So shortly after that, I was called up and I was told that I was formally declared as a suppressive person. Because I said, take your 80 steps and go. And they said, oh, okay, so you're declared. And I said, okay. It was great news. It was actually relieving news. It was liberating news. I was like, thank you. And it wasn't just like it was a monkey off my back. It was like a whole gorilla was off my back. I mean, it was, I literally felt like do right now, but I thought this would be a good opportunity to kind of tell my story, so I thought I'd tell it. So that being my background, I'd like to take a few more minutes and just kind of tell you about the most important lesson that I learned from Scientology. Did I do that? Okay. People call Scientology a cult, and they're right. It is a cult. And the last people who are ever going to know that are Scientology. And I'll tell you why about that in a second. Cult is actually an interesting word. Actually, this is very interesting. It's the root word for culture and cultivate. And it actually has the same origins as the word colony. And these words go back to an idea of a place where things are grown and where people live. The fertile ground for growing things. And then this idea developed into religious ideas, developing religious ideas. Now, any group or any culture has things about it that define its members as different from other groups or other cultures, and that's fine. That's a good thing. Humanity revels in its differences, and they should, right? We should celebrate our differences in dress, food, culture, and even ideas of worship. I'm all down for that. One of the things I spent some time learning about is what makes a cult into a cult. And a cult is actually pretty simple. A cult takes those differences to a whole new level. And it vilifies anyone who doesn't come to agree with the way the cult leaders say things should be. Now, let me give you a couple examples from my own experience. Now that I am no longer a Scientologist, I no longer believe that L. Ron Hubbard and David Miscavige are somehow blessed with divine infallibility and are smarter than everyone else. I no longer believe that if the leaders of the nations of Earth would just listen to Scientology, then the Scientologists would set everything straight with the world. I no longer fear the consequences of asking too many questions about what's going on with RTC, in management, empty ideal wars, the golden age of whatever, and the IAS, like, say, how many members there are, or how much money is in the offshore bank accounts. I will no longer have to undergo hard labor or rigorous ethics programs if I get into trouble, or ask too many uncomfortable questions about things I see that don't make any damn sense. I no longer have to listen to anyone telling me how I should think, or act, or speak, or how to raise my kids, or whether I can even get married and have kids. I no longer fear the internet, or have to be careful to screen out anti-Scientology data before it can threaten me or damage my immortal soul for all of eternity. I no longer believe that I am in a unique position to save all the other inferior human beings on this planet because of the special knowledge and status I have as a Scientologist. I no longer feel that the end justifies the means, nor that anything I do for Scientology is right just because it's for Scientology. I no longer feel guilty or shameful for not giving all of my time and money to Scientology. I no longer feel like Scientology is more important than my family, my friends, or pretty much anything else in my life. Nor do I have to worry about having non-Scientologist friends or relationships. I no longer support the idea that Scientology needs lots and lots and lots of money, and that it will never really have enough money to be secure enough to accomplish its goals. I no longer believe that it comes down to us Scientologists versus the rest of the delusional humanoids on this planet. Nor do I have to wonder why everyone can't see how great Scientology obviously is. And finally, I no longer live in fear of leaving the Church of Scientology because of what they will do to me, my family, my job, or my life. It feels really good to not have those things on my back anymore. All of those things are what make Scientology a cult. Now here's the trick to Scientology, or any other cult for that matter. Once you have someone in, and you can convince them that they are in a special and unique place where they are cellular themselves, that anything wrong with the group or what's going on in it is just a temporary phase, just part of its evolution, and everything is going to be fine in the end. And if the person has any desire to help or make things better, which most people do, then it's a pretty easy process to push that help button and make it feel like it's their duty to work for the group. Sacrificing for the greater good is noble, right? Having come out of this situation, I had some time to reflect on what got me in and kept me in all those years. And it really did come down to the us versus them, black and white thinking. Out of all the characteristics of a cult, this is the most damaging and dangerous. I mean, let's put this in perspective for a minute. If you're a Boy Scout, there's nothing really wrong with thinking that the head of the Boy Scouts is a great guy. There's nothing really wrong with giving your disposable income to the Boy Scouts to forward their purposes, or singing their praises every chance you get. But as soon as you get the idea that being a Boy Scout sets you apart from everyone else who's not a Boy Scout, and that you are somehow superior to everyone else because of that, now we have a problem. If you're convinced that you are on the side of good, and that you and your group can do no wrong, anything can be justified. Any action or punishment or penalty is totally within the bounds of reason. Intelligence has nothing to do with it. The primal urge to want to survive and to help others can be twisted into some pretty sick things. As the old saying goes, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Coming out of that situation, my head was wrapped around the cult, and it took me months to figure that out. The thing that got me out of this way of thinking and really turned it around for me was learning critical thinking skills. And I'm not preaching this as some new cult, just some substitute for what I used to have, because critical thinking is not some group of people in rows. It's a subject like math or biology, right? It's just logic. And the most important thing I learned from it is not to be afraid